Welcome, Charles Mayfield, to Highest Health. Thank you for coming on. So
Good to
you
be here.
are,
Yeah. Got,
sorry, I think it was a bit of a lag, but you're an author, you're a regenerative farmer, and you're the founder of the first lard-based skincare. Um, so for our listeners, why don't we start off and let them know what is lard? So I imagine some people might not know what that is, and also why we would want to feed it to our skin.
sure. Pleasure to be here. Lord, yeah, more people. I gave a talk last year at Hack Your Health. It looks like I'm going to be doing it again this year. Would love to see you there. They've moved that one to November in
Yeah, to
Tampa now.
Tampa.
But
I think I
anyway,
will be at that one,
yeah,
so hopefully we'll be able to connect.
yeah, good, good, good. So just right to it. Lard is the rendered subcutaneous fat from a pig.
Mm,
And there's a couple of things in there. One is it's important to talk about the difference between subcutaneous and visceral fat. There's another fat that we use. We use predominantly three fats in our skincare products. Lard, we just touched on, leaf lard, which is definitely one your listeners haven't heard of before,
yeah.
and tallow, which tallow is sort of hot right now. It's certainly in the circles I swim in. Tallow is sort of this up and coming, burgeoning fat, both for skincare and obviously for what you eat. And so tallow, just to wrap a bow around that one real quick, tallow is the placeholder term for the rendered visceral fat from a ruminant herbivore. Now that's most commonly a cow or beef, but any, elk, bison, deer, sheep, you'll see different placeholder terms for different fats from different ruminant animals, but by and large, if it says tallow, it's from a ruminant and it's from their visceral fat. The term leaf lard, just to unpack all three fats, leaf lard is the tallow equivalent, but from a pig. If you hear the term lard in any capacity, we are
Hmm.
speaking specifically of Sus scrofa, which is the taxonomy of our modern day porcine creatures. So
Is
there you
that
go.
is that like the scientific name for them or?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Sus
Okay.
scrofa. Scientific name.
Okay.
Scientific name.
I've
Yep.
never heard of that before. So why do we want to be putting lard on our skin and feeding it to our
Mm.
skin?
Great question. Well, not all lards. I say the swine is divine, but the lard is hard. So
Hmm.
a pig, a pig is a monogastric omnivore. Raise your hand if you know any other monogastric omnivores, right? Humans and pigs share. In fact, I would make the argument pigs are our closest biologically genetic ancestor on the planet. Like,
Really?
well, let me unpack that one. We train all of our surgeons on pigs. Their organs are laid out
Ah.
and aligned and put together just like ours. Their skin
Mm.
is basically a version of our skin. Okay, so training how to, dissect someone open and scalpels and all that fun stuff. We harvest heart valves from pigs and
That's
use
so
them
true.
directly in human heart repair. Okay, heparin. There's a which is a very common blood coagulant. Like we harvest that from pigs and use it
Mm.
in humans. So back to your why do we use lard on our skin? Okay, first of all, our skin is our largest organ. Full stop. It's our largest organ and it eats things. Okay. Unfortunately, regrettably, the environment that we live in today is full of tons of chemicals, preservatives, uh, emulsifiers. Most skincare is a fat-based industry. Okay,
Hmm.
so you got to use a fat. Regrettably, again, go in your local store, go in your Sephora, your Ulta, your go to your Whole Foods. Every skincare product in there if you're lucky, is made with a plant-based fat, maybe a
Hmm.
coconut oil or a shea butter.
Hmm.
Very rarely. It's usually seed oils or some type of petroleum derivative.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's also usually, yeah, it's also usually an emulsified product. So you take a fat, you mix it with water. Well, they don't like to get along, and so you gotta put an emulsifier in there, and then all these preservatives and chemicals. And so anyway, part of the problem with skincare today, a lot of chemicals in there that mess with our hormones. A lot of these are estrogen signaling, your
Mm,
phthalates, parabens, oxybenzones, various things. So there's a problem. They're using the wrong fats. I
hmm.
mean, just candidly, back to your question, like why do we use lard? It is a spot on pH balance. It is a spot on lipid balance. Okay, so the ratio of monounsaturated, saturated, polyunsaturated fats. Okay. It's a spot on match to human biology. Okay.
That's
Tons of
amazing.
oleic acid, you know. Yeah. But I guess let me go back to what I was saying earlier. Not the swine is divine, but the lard is hard. Okay. Just
Okay.
like if you take a human and if you rob a human of sunshine, they get sick. If you feed a human poorly, they get sick. Okay. If
Mm,
you don't let a human exercise or hang out with their friends every now and then and be a social creature, they get sick. And all of that toxicity, that sickness in a human, similar to a pig, is going to get stored in their subcutaneous fat. Okay. This is the beautiful part about our business, my company. You have to raise a healthy, happy pig.
okay.
And when you do that, the bacon is delightful. The pork chops taste amazing. The all the culinary benefits of raising a healthy, happy, I call it one bad day pig, but also the waste product. If you, I don't like to call it that, but that's what it is.
Mm,
It's a waste product. Fat is very hard to decompose. It doesn't break down as easily. So
huh.
even in a slaughterhouse situation, a lot of times they'll take the fat and they'll send it off to the landfill or get it
Interesting.
out of there because it doesn't break down as well.
Hmm.
So here's a great use for it. So we're taking a waste product and making, I think the best darn skincare on the planet out of it. So.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I love that you mentioned that the skin is our largest organ and that it eats things. And like what I usually like to tell people is like you have to be very careful about what you put on your skin because and like what type of environment you're in with like aerosols and whatnot because you can keep your mouth closed, but your skin is just exposed and whatever goes on your skin goes into your bloodstream and that can
Directly. Yeah.
exactly. And there's no detox pathways when you put stuff on your skin. It's just straight into the bloodstream. And like you mentioned earlier, that could wreak havoc on your hormones and just your mood, your sleep, and overall your just overall quality of living.
hmm Yeah, I like to draw the parallel just because, we've got this Make America Healthy Again movement going on, and then there seems to be a lot more people sort of waking up to how toxic the food industry is.
Mm,
And I like to make a comparison because the diet industry, the food industry, and the skincare industry look so identical. There's kind of some cross correlation of Procter and Gamble as a
right,
great
right.
example. They got a lot of business over here in food, and they got a lot of business over here in skincare. And so
Totally.
there's the preservatives, okay, the lack of nutrition
Mm,
in these highly processed, highly palatable foods, the scientific effort that's gone into making these products devoid of nutrition, but more importantly, addictive. Okay, there's similar processes in place over here in sort of industrial skincare world. I mean, I sort of joke that their job is to dry your skin and age it faster. And they do a very good job of that. And I always like to laugh with people like, when's the driest your lips ever feel?
after you put on
Ever.
like a ton of
And
chopstick, conventional
it's
chopstick.
it's the hour after you put
Yeah,
on a conventional like chapstick, right? It's like all of a
yeah,
sudden, oh, now I'm super dry again. I need more of it. I need more of it. And so,
exactly.
I yeah. So the fats that we use should come from not a plant, not a seed, not a petroleum derivative. They should come from an animal, and
Mm,
preferably an animal that was raised in accordance with nature and got to live its best life. And still, we still have to take that life and
mhm.
and make that animal food. But while we're at it, let's make sure and honor that life, the life of that animal, as best we can, and make sure that we're utilizing every part of the animal, including their fat.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's so important to utilize the whole animal nose to tail, and like you say, honor the animal. And if we're going to harvest it, why not use what God has given us to, nourish ourselves with food wise, but also skin wise? There's so many uses, and I would love if you can maybe go back to centuries ago on how we did that, and more specifically, how we did that with lard. Like, was lard incorporated into our lifestyles centuries
Oh,
ago?
huh. This is, well, yeah, great question. This is part of my, it's just really eye-opening. I'm working on a talk right now to open people's eyes to this. So, okay, so let's rewind the clock to 1910. So that's 120 some odd years ago, right? Two retirees ago. But certainly early industrial age, cities are growing, all of that. In 1910, you had no grocery stores, you had no heating, HVAC systems, you had no refrigeration.
Mm,
There's a lot of things you didn't have, okay? But everyone still had to eat. You did, however, in your small town or even in the big city, but most of us weren't living in big cities in 1910. You'd have your general store. Now
hmm,
you'd have your book if you went to the downtown. I live in a small town, and this town was here in 1910, and so
amazing.
you had your drugstore, you had your butcher, you had your baker,
Mm,
but you had a general store. I went to get my nails, my turpentine, my flour. You know, there
yeah.
is a 100% chance, a 100% chance that you walked out of that store with a can of lard
Hmm,
or leaf lard, but
okay.
pig fat. At the turn of the century, we were coming into the industrial oil scene. Procter and Gamble was doing some things with cottonseed oil. They had in the late 1800s, they had replaced the fat they were using to make their soap and candles. This was Procter and Gamble's. I forget which one was soap and which was candles, but that one was
Okay.
Procter and one was Gamble, and they made soap and candles.
Okay.
And so, what ultimately led to Crisco launching in 1911 was uh, Procter and Gamble bought up a bunch of cotton mills in Texas because cottonseed oil was becoming more prevalent in the use of soap and candle making,
Mm,
right? Because it was all we made everything with animal fat prior to 1900. You cooked
fascinating.
with it. Yeah, oh yeah. Well, I mean, you've
Huh.
heard like whale blubber. We used
Right,
to we
right.
used to harvest whales. I mean, people are like the oil and gas industry is terrible. Well, the oil and gas industry saved the whales, right?
Right, right.
Because we
There are still some very remote places that harvest whales.
Of
Yeah, yeah.
course.
And it's
Yes, and
just,
it's a,
it's a
it's usually tied in tribal,
exactly.
like ancient traditions and all that fun stuff. But
Yeah.
give the oil and gas industry some credit. That we
Yeah.
have whales today because of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, so in the late 1800s, early 1900s, you're starting to see this replacement of animal fats with predominantly cottonseed oil. That was
Okay.
the first sort of industrial seed oil we see.
And this is
Um,
because Procter and Gamble bought up a bunch of cotton mills.
this is because the meat packing industry, which was based out of Chicago, moved there during the Civil War because the Southern Confederates blockaded the meat packing industry in Cincinnati, Ohio. So
Hmm,
the Northern Union Army had to move it somewhere, and so
okay.
the history of animal fats and fats in our country, it's really remarkable. Anyway,
Wow.
there was price fixing. So the meat packing
Hmm,
industry is based out of Chicago. Why is it based out of Chicago? Remember, you didn't have any refrigeration in 1895. Okay, so if you're going to harvest a carcass of beef, which
Right.
weighs 1,500 to 2,000 pounds, okay, with no refrigeration, when are you going to harvest that animal?
Hopefully winter.
November.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, as soon as it gets cold enough to harvest an animal, you're harvesting an animal, and you're
Okay.
harvesting until you can't harvest anymore.
Okay.
And so all of the animal fat effectively in the United States of America came out of Chicago. I mean,
Mm,
you had homesteaders, uh, back to why, like, okay, this is a side talk, but why are pigs so instrumental? Okay, well, you can harvest a pig at 100 pounds. You can harvest a pig at
mm.
200 pounds. You can harvest a pig at 300. Market
It's a
weight for an
really good
average
point.
pig today is 275 to 325 pounds. Well,
Okay.
if I'm living out on the prairie with my wife and 7 kids and maybe my uncle and my dad, well,
Yeah.
a couple of grown adults can handle a 300-pound animal,
That's a really good
right?
point.
Try,
Yeah.
that's right. That's right. So you could, and again, a pig is framed out and mature at 100 pounds. Now, it
Mm,
doesn't have all the meat you'd like to have, but it's got
right.
all the flavor and all the fat. I mean, if you've
Yeah.
ever gone to a pig roast,
I
most
have.
pig roasts are little suckling pigs,
Ah, okay.
50 to 80 to 90 pound, you know, they're pig teenagers basically, not
Yeah,
the,
he didn't look too
not to
big, that
freak
guy.
people out. That's right. That's right. And so, anyway, so this again, part of the magic of this animal and their prevalence everywhere. If I'm living out on the landscape, okay, nothing goes to waste if you own pigs because they
Mm,
will eat everything. They're an omnivore. Okay, you can harvest them in any size and they taste delicious. You can scald and scrape a pig. Okay, so again, different over here. Cattle are great. Okay, but you have to skin cattle. You
mm.
can't you
Okay.
can't just dehair them. Okay, you
Ah.
skin. Of course, you make leather and all these other things, and you can make leather out of pig hide as well. However,
Huh.
again, a technology that pigs afford us as a foodstuff are I can scald that animal and take a hand scraper and I can scrape the hair off of it. So I can leave the
Mm,
skin on. And so when you start curing hams or bellies or shoulders, curing again, no refrigeration, you
mm.
know,
Yeah.
right? So, if I want to take this animal that I harvest in March, April, May, and extend the life of some of that animal, then I need to salt it. Well, if you've ever had salted pork that wasn't scalded and scraped, if it was just the meat, it's almost inedible. Because there's
Okay.
nothing keeping the moisture in. The skin acts as a moisture barrier.
Ah.
And so anyway, we're gonna have to talk. I know you're like a 30-35 minute show. I'll have to come back on, but
We'll
but
have to
the
do a part two for sure.
I'd love to. I'd love to. I
Yeah.
love talking pigs. So back to 1910. There's a 100% chance that you walked out of that general store with a can of lard. Now tallow was over here in soap and candle making.
Okay.
Okay, and so and we did not harvest nearly as many beef in
Okay.
1910 as we did hogs because they were harder to handle. Now we harvested plenty in the winter, but there was a 0% chance that you'd be on someone's farmstead in July in Oklahoma and them say, "Hey, let's go put that cow down and butcher it up."
0%
There's
chance.
no way 0% chance.
Yeah, I
What are
never
you going
thought
to pick
about
it up
that.
with? Oh,
True.
we only harvested. We harvested most of our food. Most of our
Mm,
animal protein was harvested in the winter. That's when you hunted. Now you'd have a
mm.
cow, but that was for milk and
Okay.
butter, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But the pig, because a pig could eat anything.
Hmm.
Pigs are like dogs too. They're very smart animals. So you don't need a
Hmm.
lot of fences. If that
Okay.
pig knows you're feeding it all the scraps out of your kitchen, it's going to stay right there by the house and
Awesome.
it's not going to run off. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, pigs are very smart animals. So they were a much bigger part of our food stuff
Okay.
historically. tallow would only really re-emerge as a fat post World War II because now we had industrial scale, reliable air conditioning and cooling
Ah,
capacity.
okay.
So now the beef industry has the opportunity to harvest year round.
Okay.
So now all of a sudden, here's a crazy one for you. Everyone knows about tallow right now, right? Because
Yeah.
McDonald's was cooking with tallow up until the late '90s or mid '90s, I think,
Okay.
right? Tallow,
Yep, yep.
lard disappeared. Lard disappeared after World War II. I can unpack that if you need me to, but everyone knows about tallow. Tallow, tallow. Here's why McDonald's started cooking with tallow. The industrial seed oil market and our ability to refine these garbage oils and turn them into something had not reached its full capacity yet. So making seed oils was still
I
very
see.
expensive.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And we were over, again, tallow comes from the visceral fat of the animal. Okay. You don't ever see subcutaneous beef fat. Why? Because it ends up in the grind. It's very, very
Mm.
hard to pack subcutaneous fat onto a ruminant animal because you got to just feed the tar out of them, right? They're
Okay.
not good at adding excess
Okay.
fat.
Okay.
Um, anyway, I'm all over the board here, but the point is you didn't see tallow, you saw tallow's prevalence because it was a waste product. We
Mm.
weren't making candles or soap with tallow anymore in
Okay.
1945, 1950.
So it
Okay?
was cheap
We weren't
for,
Go ahead.
cheap for them for like McDonald's to use tallow. It was a cheap option.
It was the cheap option.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Again, it doesn't compost well. So if I'm running a slaughterhouse, if I'm at the meat
Yep.
packing industry, like what am I going to do with? No one's buying the beef
Right.
fat anymore because they're making soap and candles out of cottonseed oil.
Okay.
It doesn't landfill very well. Man, I'd love to just get rid of this stuff. And so it
Yeah.
was the cheapest fat to get your
Okay.
hands on. And it's great. It also, is wonderful and tasty and fries very well and all those fun things. But yeah, lard, eh, man, we could just talk about this all. Lard was the go-to fat
Okay.
in
So
1910.
what were people doing with it when they walked out of the can, when they walked out of the general store with a can of lard? Were they cooking
Oh,
with it or like using?
frying, baking, every
Okay.
conceivable. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
we've lost all
Okay.
remote and any idea of like what life was like
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
1910. I mean, you cooked every single meal.
In lard, I'd imagine.
Well, I mean, first of all, you cooked every single meal.
Oh yeah, exactly.
There was no meat. There was no uh,
That is such a good
lean
point.
cuisine or no. I mean, every single meal was arguably made from scratch. Now,
Wow.
again, if you think about that general store,
Hmm.
if you went to New York City in 1910, you had delis,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
You had the ability to go get a sandwich,
Yep.
but the bread was baked at the baker and the salami was cured at the abattoir and
Okay.
and the mayonnaise was made fresh in house, right? But
Yeah,
every single meal was scratch made. And
that's
so you
amazing.
walk out with that can of lard. Yeah, of course. And you walk
Yeah.
out with that can of lard. What are you using it for? Everything. Everything, certainly culinarily.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting.
the skincare industry, interestingly enough, the skincare industry is really born out of more and more people as a percentage of the population removing themselves from the hunting, gathering, cooking,
Hmm.
evisceration of animal protein.
Ah,
Again, in
yeah,
1910, every single meal that required some form of fat, okay,
yeah.
which was a lot of meals, okay, required fat. That fat came from animals.
Okay.
Full stop,
Yep.
right? And now, again, if you were hunting or if you were farming, I mean, if you've ever eviscerated a deer or a pig or it's impossible to do that without getting visceral fat and subcutaneous fat all over yourself.
Okay.
Okay, and then you hand that off to the lady, the woman of the house, and she's got a big jar of lard, or she's taking that carcass fat and rendering it down to preserve it, and so
Yep.
she's covered in every woman's covered in fat.
So it was kind of just like a like the default was like you're gonna be covered in lard because this is just how we live with like hunting and whatnot, and your skin is just getting moisturized in the process.
I would say just animal fat.
Okay.
Again,
It
lard
just
was
animal
very
fat in general.
prevalent, but just
Yeah.
animal fat. Yeah, the uh, as you became wealthy
Hmm.
and and had enough money to either pay someone else to make your meals, pay someone else to do your hunting, pay someone else to do
Mm.
your butchering, right?
Right,
You
right.
have now effectively removed your hands. You've removed
I
your
see.
skin
Yeah.
from the process that would normally have it covered in animal fat at least once a week.
Wow. Yeah. It's like a
Yeah.
built-in moisturization process that they were doing before they got wealthy and outsourced it.
Yep. Yep.
That's
Well, I
really
mean,
cool.
look, dig into the history book. Cleopatra is very famous. Were, the Egyptians were mesmerized by skin health, right? And you read all
Mm.
these various things that Cleopatra was doing, bathing in goat's milk and, olive
Mm.
oil and all the honeys. And, and again, who was Cleopatra? She was this, you know, very wealthy ruler that was kept away from the day-to-day mundane routines that actually feed your skin. And so it made sense for the wealthy to have a skincare routine because they didn't have
I
a
see.
skincare routine.
I see. Very cool. So I was researching lard, and I don't know if you know this. I don't know, but I would love your feedback on this. But I found that there are antibacterial properties in lard. Have you read that before or researched that at all?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's
I,
amazing.
there's well, um, I'm
And
gonna say
it's
that
like
there are
there's
antibac.
suspected antifungal properties too, but not necessarily confirmed.
Well, I love leaning into that. Okay. So everyone wants to see the studies these days. We've been
Yeah,
conditioned like,
exactly.
show me the double-blind placebo test.
Exactly.
Okay. You can't patent lard. You
Mm,
can't patent tallow. Okay. There's no
good point.
intellectual property value there. Okay. So
Mm,
there's no incentive. And I would make the argument that if people really knew the power of the lard and the tallow and animal fat in general, it would put a serious damper on Procter and Gamble's profits.
so true.
Okay,
Yeah,
or
you can't
or
patent that either.
CeraVe or oil of Olay. So let's not study this stuff. But what I like to do is, first and foremost, you are absolutely right. Animal fat, I'm just going to use the big placeholder term animal fat. Animal fat is by nature an antibacterial, antifungal environment.
Mm,
And the reason I know this intuitively, your listeners know this too, is have you ever eaten bacon?
yeah.
Okay. What do you do with the drippings?
Honestly, I'll just pour them down the sink.
Oh, bless your heart. Okay. Here's what I do with the drippings.
Like
Okay.
what's left in the pan, right?
Here's what any good red-blooded American should do
Okay,
with
tell
the
me.
drippings. Okay. Take a coffee cup out of your cupboard
Okay.
and pour the drippings in the coffee cup and leave it on your kitchen counter. It will cool off, and then the next day, if you've got to brown your chuck roast or
Mm,
fry something up, you just dip your spoon in there.
I
There's
have done
a
that before too.
You have done that before.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was just
The
more than I could use, so some of
Of
it would
course,
just
it
go down
always
the
is.
sink.
It
Yeah.
always is. But the point is that you can leave that cup of fat on your kitchen counter for months in most
Mm,
cases, and nothing happens.
mm,
Okay. And here's another one. I love unpacking this. Are you familiar with the dish duck confit?
yes.
Okay. Do you know what confit is?
Is it a fat or
It's the French term for a fat bath, cooking
ah,
cooking a
okay.
meal in its own fat. And so you take Okay, so duck confit. I mean, there's all sorts of confit. There's chicken confit and various, but just let's just focus on duck confit. That form or style of French cuisine cooking way predates refrigeration
Okay.
or the ability to take something and protect it from an environment of bacteria. Okay, when you confit cook your duck, you're braising it, so it's in a liquid bath with all the various things, the
Yeah.
recipe calls for, but it's going to render the fat of that duck. And what happens? The fat rises to the top of the dish. Okay. And when we remove it from heat, now the heat has killed all the bacteria
Mm.
in the dish.
Okay.
Okay. The
Yep.
fat caps. Okay, so that fat stays on top, and as the dish cools, again, this is in 1750 we're doing
Wow.
this. This is
Yeah.
in 1629 we're doing
Okay.
this. Certainly in 1885,
Right.
okay?
Right.
Certainly in 1910 we're doing this.
Okay.
Okay? The as the dish cools, the fat caps. It turns from a liquid to a solid,
Yep.
and there's no airborne bacteria or fungus or anything that can penetrate that fat lid. And it sits on the counter for 2, 3, 4 days, cures up. That's part of the eloquence of a duck confit
Mm.
recipe is you let it work.
Amazing.
Now that we've yeah, of
It's a natural
course. And
preservative.
so I obviously, again,
Hmm.
why does it not landfill well? Because what the heck is a microbe or a fungal being gonna do thing that's antimicrobial?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it doesn't break down in nature very well.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it is. I would make the argument that is the most wonderful antibacterial, antifungal environment you could possibly ask for.
Yeah. It reminds me of, I'm just drawing parallels here. And you know Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride because you've been to
Oh
the
yeah,
Western
she's
A
been on. You've
Price.
had some great guests on your
Oh,
podcast.
thank you. Yeah, she's been on. And one of her big things about shifting your gut microbiome is consuming a lot of animal fats. And it makes sense because, especially when you're talking about it now, because that fat will actually kill the overgrowth and any fungal overgrowth. So um, I'm just drawing parallels internally. And yeah, I find that fascinating.
I think we're just gonna be scratching the surface in the next decade on the human microbiome.
Mm,
Um, I mean, there's already some work being done there, but our understanding of just how fragile and more importantly, just how absolutely unsustainable our environment is today.
hmm.
I mean, this is skincare, right? It's this your gut microbiome. Well, if there's a preservative I'm putting in food that allows me to stick it in a box and sit it on a shelf for 8 months and it not go bad, well, what is that preservative doing in my gut? Right. And so
Yeah.
skincare is the same way. And for your listeners that don't understand, we've got 5 to 7 pounds of
Mhm.
bugs living in, on, all over us. We've got
Mm,
all a variety of ecosystems. Your armpit ecosystem
yes.
is very different than your elbow ecosystem, but they're all inhabited and covered by these microscopic organisms. Why are they there? Well, there's a million reasons. We don't understand them all, but they're there for a reason. And so back to these skincare products, we're putting on our skin compounds that are designed to kill bacteria.
Yep, you're so right, which is
So
what we don't want to do.
we do so how do our products benefit the skin? One is they're aligned with the pH
Mm,
of our skin, right? pH is a really big skincare thing. And why is that? Well, because our skin has evolved over, thousands and millions of years to deal with nature.
okay.
Full
Yeah.
stop. Full
Yeah.
stop, right?
Hmm.
And nature has hot things and cold things, so our skin's very sensitive and good at hot and cold.
Hmm.
But outside of that, I mean, you know, our skin has no idea what 99% of the things that end up on our skin today are
Hmm.
because they didn't even exist 150 years ago.
Yep.
You know, these phthalates and parabens and oxybenzones and these forever chemicals. Formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is allowed as an ingredient in our skincare in the United States of America, an embalming agent for
Isn't
crying
that
out
what they
loud.
use
And
to
so,
taxidermy animals? Formaldehyde?
yes, it's an embalming agent. Yes, and they
I
they
think they
they,
use
they,
it
they allow it along with a.
use it in hair products
It's
too.
awful.
I think it's the
Uh
keratin.
huh.
Yeah. I was just one of
Hmm.
my friends had like
Yep.
something with I think she did like a keratin treatment and I was just like curious, like, oh, like did you read about like what's in that stuff and etc. And she's like, yeah, I know it's like all toxic stuff. And so anyway, I went home later and just started like researching it and I was like, oh wow, there's formaldehyde in there. um but yeah,
It's scary.
yeah, it is scary. But yeah, back to your earlier point, like lard is amazing because it does have those antibacterial properties and
Mhm.
antifungal properties. Um, but so with that said, like everyone wants beautiful, vibrant, supple, hydrated skin. What are some of the mistakes you see that people are making these days, lifestyle wise, skincare wise? We
Sure.
kind of we kind of touched
Yeah.
on it, but yeah, from your perspective.
Yeah, I no, I love this question because great looking skin is effectively free.
Mm,
Okay. You know, put all the skincare. I mean, I'd love for people to buy our product, but the lowest hanging fruit for your skin thriving is, make sure you're getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. Make
mm,
sure you're getting plenty of water, hydration. Ideally, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of where's your water coming from. Like, drink your dadgum water, okay? If
yeah,
it's from the faucet, great, but let's find let's find cleaner sources of water.
yeah.
Make sure you're eating plenty. You got to give your body the ingredients it needs to manufacture and maintain optimal skin. So that is going to be a diet that's high in saturated fat, preferably from animal sources,
Mm,
eggs, beef, pork, chicken. Uh, you know, you can't get enough animal protein and animal fat in your body.
okay.
Um, so that's all like foundational stuff. Here's the super weird one that again, it will revolutionize your skincare is put the soap and the cleansers and the alcohol-based swabs and put all of that garbage down.
Yeah.
Literally put it down. We have a soap product. Our soap is amazing. We make it with goat's milk and our smart lard.
I
And
did
that
see that. I
soap,
was super excited.
oh, it's fantastic. But here's the crazy thing. I probably soap hmm, 4 to 6 times a month.
Oh, wow.
Tops,
Yeah.
tops. Now I shower every day. Again, back to technology, right?
Yep.
What is a technological advancement that is so normalized today we've forgotten what an advancement is? Well, how about running hot water, which
Mm,
is maybe 80 years old? I mean, in 1950, you were rich if
if
you
you,
had a hot water heater.
huh. Interesting.
Like, you were
Wow.
living in the city, you were doing really well for yourself,
It's
okay?
not even that
What
long
is
ago.
It's not even that long ago.
Yeah.
What is Natasha, what is dirty? I feel dirty. Let's define that real quick. Okay, so I feel dirty. Our glands make sebum, which is the
Hmm.
human version of oil. We sweat. Okay,
Mm,
so I get up, I go have a challenging day at work. Maybe it's hot, maybe it's cold. I've worked out, I've been outside, so all the particulate matter in the air has sort of, bound to my
yep.
skin. I'm a little oily here or sweaty there, blah, 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 blah. I have excess dirt and grime on my skin.
Mm,
Well,
yeah.
you can remove every bit of that with a washcloth and warm water.
You
And now all
can.
of a sudden, we're not artificially stripping all of the microbiome. and all of the oil off of our skin. And this has become a real issue in the last 4 to 5 years with, obviously the pandemic and the germ theory and everyone's got to
Oh yeah.
sanitize, bull
Yeah.
crap. No, we have co-evolved with these bugs.
Yep. So true.
I'm not anti-sanitation.
Mhm.
I am all for living in a sanitized world,
There's
but
ways to do it that without disrupting our microbiome, our endocrine system, and while supporting, our actual health.
look at pictures of your great great grandparents. Look
Yeah.
at pictures of them. Their skin looks amazing. If
Yep.
they were lucky, they took a bath once a week.
Mm.
Once a week, if they were lucky,
Hmm.
right? They wore the same clothes every single day. They
Yep.
were out in the sun all the time, you know.
Yeah.
So it's
And they weren't using any of
if the
those.
bathing, oh yeah, if the constant bathing and sanitation were doing our skin any favors, you know, mm,
Yeah.
I find that very hard to believe. Look at the skincare world today, like highest incidence of eczema, psoriasis,
I know.
cheilitis.
Yep.
I mean, our our skin is just under attack, and of course, it's all being normalized now. Like if you watch mainstream media or like. There's eczema and psoriasis ads, and take this
Mm.
injection or this cream, like more and more and more and more prevalent.
Yeah.
And
Instead of treating it from like what we eat and what we actually like put on our skin. Um, but yeah, to your point earlier, our skin definitely has a microbiome, and I believe it's called our biome. And when we're assaulting it with, all of these conventional products that have synthetic ingredients, we disrupt that harmony on our skin. And if you talk to like Dr. Natasha or some other people, like some other nutritionists who are in the sort of like natural world of helping heal people, they'll say to put kefir on your skin, put yogurt on your skin,
mhm.
put honey on your skin, and this will help restore the proper harmony of that biome on your skin. So yeah, you're 100% in line with what they're speaking to as well.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, again, start with real naturally occurring ingredients. I would definitely push lard and
Oh
even
yeah.
pig skin. I would push that to the top of the pile in terms of the most efficacious way to feed your skin.
Yeah, well, now we
Um,
can do that thanks to your product. And you're making it
that's well,
a lot easier for people to have access to that. But before these kinds of products with lard in them, it was like, very hard to, I guess, I mean, you're not really going to take like the fat from a pork chop, and it's not as easily applicable to incorporate into your everyday living. So with
you
farrow,
never done that at a restaurant? You order the pork chop and you trade a little fat off and you just rub it on your
I
cheek. You
haven't.
never done that before?
Have you?
No, no, but it gives me a great idea for like a Instagram reel, a comedy.
I would love to see
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we're gonna make that happen.
Yeah, please do. Okay, cool. So the
I know
other,
you've got a hard stop, so
oh yeah, we're kind of over. I'll just ask these two last questions and then we'll get
all
going.
right.
But so how is sun of how does sun affect our skin health and overall health?
It's vital. Sun exposure is vital for human thriving.
Mm,
Part of the problem with the sunscreen industry, and we have lost complete relations and respect for the sun. Again, rewind it back to 1910. Um, if you were out in the fields, which most of us were at 11, 12 o'clock, you were fully clothed.
mm,
You were hiding from you would get a 10 to 15 minutes of exposure a day. Most of the vitamin D we absorb actually comes in through the eyes. It's
okay,
metabolized through the sun exposure to our eyes.
okay.
No, the sun is absolutely critical. what I like to tell people is don't think for a second that some chemical based sunscreen that you gobble all over, coat your body with is somehow going to free you up to go stand half naked in full sun for 3, 4, 5 hours a day in the summer.
Mm,
That's ludicrous.
mm,
Our optimal sunning times are up until about 11
mm.
or after 3 or 4.
Okay.
Um, Good rule of thumb for your listeners: if your shadow is taller than you are,
Mm.
then you can't get sunburned.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Okay, so yep, if
Interesting.
your shadow is taller than you, then the sun is low enough in the sky that the atmosphere is reflecting enough of the UV to not sunburn you.
Okay.
But
Amazing.
you can still get plenty of benefits,
Right,
right?
right.
Um, but yeah, cover up.
Okay.
Big
But
floppy
respect the sun.
hat. We got all the clothes. Respect the sun. Respect it.
Excellent. Awesome.
That's my
Um,
advice. And make sure that your skin's properly moisturized with
yeah,
optimal products.
amazing. So, final question for you, Charles. What does it mean to you to be living in your highest health?
Oh gosh, my highest health. Oh. My highest health. I'm 51 years old. And so waking up with energy and going to bed tired,
Mm,
that's that's a good day.
love it.
Still out here sort of wearing it out. I haven't checked my hormones in a while. I just turned 50. I'm 51, so I'm sort of going through all the midlife male. Oh, well,
Mm,
you should go get this. You should go get that.
I
So I'm
guess
going
there's a
through
male
all of that
version of
right
it
now.
too.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. There's. I mean,
Well,
when's
it
this
looks like
gonna
you're doing
air?
amazing. Pardon?
When's this gonna air?
Probably in about 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, so about the time this airs, I'll be getting my first and God willing my last colonoscopy.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Well, I hope that
yeah.
goes
I
well.
guess I was supposed to have one a while ago,
Interesting.
but yeah, no. I mean, I feel good. I would you know, my highest giving myself the highest quality food and highest quality exercise and just like highest quality life.
Of
That's
that.
just yeah, just giving myself and my family, my kids, the ingredients to let this bag of bones and muscle like perform at its highest
High
level.
quality living.
Yep.
No diluted
Yep.
version.
Well, you got to dilute certain things.
I
Sometimes,
suppose.
sometimes if you want the whiskey to taste right, you got to dilute it with a little water.
You're a you're a wise man. Well, this has been
So
awesome. I feel like this conversation flew by, so we'll definitely have to do another part two.
I would love that, and I looking forward to seeing you at some other events this year. So
Likewise, yeah. Hopefully, I'm sure we will cross paths at conferences this year. Thank you,
no
Charles,
doubt.
and I'll talk to you soon. And thank you for the skin farrow. It's been amazing. And the one thing I'll just share is that you can totally tell when the product is non-synthetic because it's kind of like taking a bite of like a delicious meal where you get like a heightened sensation.
Hmm.
And you feel that when you put on products that are just top-notch clean. And that's definitely what you feel with Farrow. Like you get like a little boost of excitement.
Um, well, if any of your listeners want, I did put a coupon code together, HHP, Highest Health Podcast. So
Amazing.
HHP will save them 15% off any of our products. So,
That is awesome. I love it. Thank you, Charles. I'll make
oh,
note of
thank you,
that.
Natasha.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I'll talk to you soon. Ciao.